Known throughout the neighborhood for his humble heart and unwavering honesty, Marcus has lived on the streets of New York for over a decade. Despite having nothing to his name, he's built a reputation as someone who can always be trusted. When he discovers a wallet filled with more cash than he's seen in years, he doesn't think twice about doing the right thing. What he doesn't know is that the wallet belongs to Alexandra Rothschild, a reclusive tech CEO whose billions have brought success but also isolation. This chance encounter between two people from completely different worlds is about to prove that life's greatest riches can't be measured in dollars. What happens when true wealth meets real worth? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun hadn't yet reached over the skyscrapers when Marcus folded his weathered blanket with military precision. His few possessions fit into a worn backpack, except for one, a Bronze Star medal, carefully wrapped in cloth and tucked into an inner pocket close to his heart. The medal was a reminder of another life, before circumstances and choices had led him to this bench in Central Park. He checked his watch. A cheap digital timepiece given to him by Sarah, the owner of the corner cafe. 6:15 a.m., right on schedule. Marcus lived by routines, finding dignity in their precision. First stop, the public restroom by the boathouse, where he'd wash up and change into his cleanest shirt. The attendant, Miguel, always left it open early for him. "Morning, Mr. Marcus," Miguel said, nodding respectfully. "Left you some fresh soap." "Appreciate it, friend." Marcus's voice carried the warmth of southern roots, softening the morning chill. In the mirror, he studied his reflection. At 58, his face showed the wear of years on the streets, but his eyes remained clear and alert. He trimmed his grey beard carefully with scissors borrowed from Sarah's cafe. Appearance mattered to Marcus. It was one of the few things he could still control. By 7, he was helping Sarah set up her cafe's outdoor seating. It was their unspoken arrangement. He kept an eye on the place, cleaned tables, and in return she provided coffee and day-old pastries. "You're late," Sarah teased, her dark hair streaked with early grey, despite her 40 years. She handed him a steaming cup of coffee. "Fixing my tie," Marcus joked, adjusting an imaginary necktie. Their morning banter was as much a part of his routine as the rising sun. Sarah's cafe sat on the corner of 72nd and Madison, a small island of authenticity. In a sea of corporate chains, the regulars knew Marcus not as the homeless man, but as the cafe's unofficial security guard and resident philosopher. Even the local beat cops greeted him by name. As he wiped down tables, his hand brushed against the medal in his pocket. The familiar weight triggered a flood of memories. Sand and gunfire, brotherhood and loss, the day everything changed. His fingers traced the edge of the medal through the fabric of his jacket. "You're thinking about them again," Sarah said softly, placing a fresh coffee and blueberry muffin on his table. She was the only one who knew pieces of his story, collected over years of morning conversations. "Anniversary's coming up," Marcus replied, his voice distant. 15 years next week since—" He trailed off. But Sarah understood. She'd heard enough over the years to know that Marcus's path from decorated veteran to homeless man wasn't a simple story of bad luck or poor choices. Some wounds ran deeper than circumstance. A group of business people hurried past, briefcases and coffee, cups in hand, smartphones demanding their attention. One young woman dropped her scarf without noticing. Marcus picked it up and called after her, but she was already gone, lost in the rush of the city. "Leave it on the hook," Sarah suggested, pointing to the lost and found hook by the cafe door. "She'll probably come back looking for it." Marcus carefully hung the scarf, smoothing its wrinkles. It was a small gesture, but these were the moments that defined him. Honesty wasn't a choice for Marcus. It was the foundation he'd rebuilt his life upon after everything else had crumbled. The morning crowd began to thin, leaving Marcus to his regular spot at the corner table. From here, he could watch the city's Endless parade, tourists with maps, joggers with expensive running shoes, children in private school uniforms. Each face told a story, and Marcus had learned to read them all. His hand returned to the medal in his pocket, a habit he'd developed over the years. The metal had grown smooth from countless touches, like a worry stone wearing down under the weight of memory. Sometimes, late at night on his park bench, he'd take it out and let the moonlight catch its surface, remembering the men he'd served with, wondering if they'd understand the path his life had taken. Sarah watched him from behind the counter, concern softening her features. She'd offered him a proper job many times, but Marcus always declined. Some people, he'd told her once, aren't meant for walls anymore. She didn't fully understand, but she respected his choice, recognizing that his presence added something valuable to her cafe that couldn't be measured in wages. 40 stories above the streets where Marcus wiped down cafe tables, Alexandra Rothschild stood before a wall of windows, watching her city wake up. Her reflection ghosted against the glass, elegant in a tailored charcoal suit, auburn hair pulled back in a precise knot, not a detail out of place. The first rays of sunlight caught the edge of her latest achievement, a Crystal CEO award declaring her Tech Innovator of the Year. "Your 7 a.m. is waiting," Thomas announced from the doorway. Her assistant of 8 years moved with practiced efficiency, tablet in hand. "And the board wants to move the quarterly review to Thursday." Alexandra didn't turn from the window. "They're getting nervous about the AI integration." "They're getting nervous about you," Thomas corrected, stepping closer. "The press is calling. You're the ice queen of Silicon Alley. The board thinks you're becoming too isolated." Now she did turn, one eyebrow raised. "Since when do I care what they call me?" "Since the shareholders started listening." Thomas's loyalty allowed him this honesty. They want a human face for the company, not just stellar profits. Alexandra's gaze drifted to the award on her desk. The crystal caught the light, fracturing it into rainbow patterns on her white walls. 10 years ago, she'd been a coding prodigy with a dream of changing the world through technology. Now, she ran a multi-billion-dollar empire. But somewhere along the way, the dream had transformed into something colder, more distant. "The 7 a.m. can wait," she decided. "Show me the latest user data from the beta test." Thomas pulled up the figures, and Alexandra lost herself in the familiar comfort of numbers and algorithms. This was her true element, not the boardrooms and press conferences, but the pure language of code. Here everything made sense. Variables behaved according to clear rules. There was no messiness, no emotion, no disappointment. A notification popped up on her screen, another article about her reclusive genius lifestyle. The photo they'd used was 3 years old, taken at her last public appearance. She closed it without reading. "Your sister called again," Thomas mentioned carefully. "About Sunday dinner. Tell her I'm busy." The response was automatic, practiced. "That's what I told her last month, and the month before." Alexandra's fingers paused over her keyboard. In the reflection of her monitor, the Crystal Award seemed to mock her success. All that achievement, and her sister still called monthly, hoping this time would be different. "The board might have a point," Thomas ventured. "About the isolation." "The board," Alexandra said sharply, "is concerned about optics. I'm concerned about excellence." She gestured to the wall of screens displaying real-time data from her company's global operations. "This is what matters, real impact, not dinner party small talk." But even as she spoke, a familiar emptiness echoed beneath her words. The same emptiness that greeted her each evening in her penthouse apartment, where every surface gleamed with expensive minimalism and every room felt like a museum piece, perfect and untouchable. Her phone buzzed. Another message from her sister, a photo of her niece's art project, bright and messy and alive. Alexandra stared at it for a long moment before swiping it away. "The morning briefing," Thomas prompted gently. "Yes," she straightened, armor back in place. "And Thomas, Move the board review back to its original time. Let them work around my schedule for once. The award caught the morning light again, sending prisms dancing across her desk. Alexandra remembered the night she received it, standing on stage before her peers. Success was supposed to feel warmer than this, wasn't it? Less like a perfect crystal, cold and hard and beautiful, and more like what? She couldn't remember anymore. The security footage played on a loop on Thomas's tablet, a black leather wallet falling from an expensive handbag, lying unnoticed on the sidewalk for exactly 7 minutes before a man in a worn jacket picked it up. The timestamp read 8:47 a.m. "Run it again," Alexandra commanded, leaning closer. The security team had pulled footage from every camera along her usual route from the parking garage to the office. "There, freeze it." The image showed the man's face clearly as he looked up, seemingly straight into the camera. There was something in his expression that caught Alexandra's attention, not the furtive look of a thief, but something else, something that made her pause. "He's homeless," one of the security officers said dismissively. "Probably halfway to Jersey by now with your cards maxed out." Thomas checked his tablet. "No unusual activity on any of your accounts. The cards haven't been touched." Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus sat at his usual table outside Sarah's cafe, the wallet heavy in his pocket. He'd discovered it during his morning routine, lying against the curb like a test from above. Inside, 3 platinum credit cards, several $100 bills, and a business card for Alexandra Rothschild, CEO of Rothtech Industries. "You should turn it into the police," Sarah suggested, refilling his coffee cup. She'd noticed his distraction, the way his hand kept touching his pocket. Marcus shook his head. "Police stations make people nervous. If someone's lost something valuable, first place they'll check is where they lost it." The wallet's leather was soft, expensive. Marcus could feel the weight of the cash inside, enough to rent a room for months, to buy new clothes, to change his circumstances. But that wasn't who he was, not anymore. "You're sure about this?" Sarah asked, watching him check the address on the business card again. "You could at least wait for them to come to you, claim a reward." "Not about reward," Marcus replied, standing up. His bronze star medal shifted in his pocket, a familiar weight next to the stranger's wallet. "About doing what's right." Back in her office, Alexandra paced before the wall of windows. She'd cancelled her morning meetings, something she never did. A wallet was replaceable. The cards could be cancelled. The cash didn't matter. So why did this bother her so much? "The police said to wait," Thomas reminded her. "If someone turns it in..." "If..." Alexandra turned from the window. "Look at that footage again. Look at his face when he finds it. That's not a thief's face, Thomas. With all due respect, you can't tell someone's character from a security camera freeze frame." But she could. Something in the way the man had knelt to pick up the wallet, how he'd looked around as if searching for its owner, stirred a memory of being 16, dropping her first paycheck from coding websites, of a stranger chasing her down the street to return it, of how that small act of honesty had restored her faith in people, right when she'd needed it most. Marcus stood in the lobby of Rothtech Tower, acutely aware of the security guard's suspicious glances. His reflection in the polished marble floors showed every wear and tear in his clothing, every mark of his circumstances. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's tone made it clear that she doubted she could. "Found something that belongs to Ms. Rothschild," Marcus said quietly, dignity wrapped around him like armor. "Just want to return it." Upstairs, the security footage continued its loop. Alexandra watched the man pick up her wallet one more time, studying his face. "What do we know about him?" she asked. Thomas consulted his tablet. "Local homeless man. Spends most mornings at a cafe on 72nd and Madison. The owner says he's been a fixture there for years. Former military, according to locals." Alexandra's... The phone buzzed. A text from lobby security. "Individual here claims to have found your wallet. Matches camera footage. Awaiting instructions." She stared at the message for a long moment. The board's words about her isolation echoed in her mind, about becoming too removed from the real world, too wrapped in her crystal tower. "Tell them I'm coming down," she decided. "Alexandra," Thomas protested, "I can handle this. There's no need for you to—" "Yes," she said quietly, "there is." She looked at her reflection in the window, at the perfect suit and carefully arranged hair, at the successful CEO who had everything and nothing. "There is." The security guards flanked Marcus as though escorting a prisoner, rather than someone doing a good deed. The lobby's marble expanse felt endless, each step echoing with institutional suspicion. He kept his posture straight, dignity intact, the wallet held carefully in his weathered hands. The elevator doors opened. Alexandra Rothschild's first impression wasn't what the media portrayed. No ice queen despite her reputation. Instead, Marcus saw something familiar in her eyes, a guarded loneliness he recognized from his own reflection. "Ms. Rothschild," he said, extending the wallet. "Found this on Madison Avenue." She took it slowly, her manicured fingers a stark contrast to his calloused ones. "You looked inside?" "Had to find out whose it was." His honesty was direct, unadorned. "Money's all there. Cards, too." Thomas, hovering nearby, quickly verified this. Alexandra hadn't taken her eyes off Marcus's face. "Would you join me for coffee?" she asked suddenly. The security guards exchanged glances. Thomas started to object, but Alexandra's attention remained fixed on Marcus, waiting. "Know a good place," Marcus said after a moment, "if you don't mind walking." To everyone's surprise, Alexandra nodded. "Lead the way." They walked in silence, an unlikely pair drawing curious glances from passers-by. Alexandra had insisted on going alone, though she knew Thomas was having security follow discreetly. The morning sun caught the edges of the buildings, making the city glow. Sarah's eyes widened when they entered her cafe, but she recovered quickly. "Marcus's table is free," she said, as though billionaire CEOs commonly accompanied homeless men to her establishment. The coffee cups arrived without being ordered. Sarah knew Marcus's preference, and she'd guessed Alexandra's with uncanny accuracy. Strong cappuccino, no sugar. The cafe logo on the cups, a simple design of intertwined leaves, seemed to bridge the gap between their worlds. "Why did you return it?" Alexandra asked finally, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. Marcus considered the question. "Same reason you came down to meet me yourself, I expect. Sometimes doing the right thing means doing it in person." A smile touched her lips, the first real one in longer than she could remember. "Most people would have kept it, or at least expected a reward." "Most people do what's easy," Marcus replied. "Doesn't make it right." Sarah appeared with a plate of freshly baked scones, setting them between the two of them like a peace offering. The cafe's morning regulars tried not to stare at the unusual scene unfolding at the corner table. "You're a veteran," Alexandra said. Not a question. Marcus's hand moved instinctively to his pocket where the bronze star rested. "Long time ago. But it still shapes who you are. Like that award on your desk shapes you?" His observation startled her. He nodded toward the building visible through the cafe window. "Saw it when I was up there. Pretty thing, cold though." Alexandra's fingers tightened around her cup, the cafe's logo pressing into her palm. "Success usually is. Depends how you measure it." Marcus picked up a scone, broke it carefully in half, offered her a piece with the same dignity he'd shown, returning the wallet. "Way I see it, success is like this coffee cup, not about how fancy it is, about what you put in it and who you share it with." The simple wisdom of his words cut through layers of corporate armor. Alexandra found herself telling him about her sister's calls, the niece's artwork, the board's concerns about her isolation. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally adding a quiet observation that revealed surprising insight. "Walls work both ways," he said finally. "Keep things out, but also keep you in." Sarah refilled their cups, the cafe logo appearing again like a recurring motif in their unfolding story. Alexandra studied it. two leaves intertwined, neither complete without the other. "Why did you really ask me to coffee?" Marcus questioned, his turn to seek answers. Alexandra considered the security camera footage that had captured his expression, the moment of choice when he'd found her wallet. "I wanted to understand." "What?" "How someone who has nothing can seem so wealthy." "In all the ways that matter," Marcus smiled, touching his pocket where the bronze star lay. "Who says I have nothing?" The morning light streamed through the cafe windows, warming their coffee cups, softening the boundaries between their worlds. For a moment, they were just two people sharing coffee and conversation, their differences dissolved in the simple humanity of the moment. Neither noticed Thomas watching from across the street, phone in hand, witnessing something extraordinary. Alexandra Rothschild, the ice queen of Silicon Alley, laughing at something a homeless veteran had said over coffee in a corner cafe. By noon, the story had exploded. "Homeless hero returns billionaire's wallet," screamed the headlines, accompanied by hastily snapped photos of Marcus and Alexandra at Sarah's cafe. The newspaper lay on Sarah's counter, its bold typeface drawing curious onlookers who pressed their faces against the cafe windows, hoping for a glimpse of where it happened. "They're calling non-stop," Sarah told Marcus, who had retreated to his usual spot in the kitchen, away from prying eyes. "Every news outlet in the city wants to talk to you." Marcus folded the newspaper carefully, his weathered fingers smoothing its creases. Not much to say. Did what anyone should have done. But the world, it seemed, disagreed. The story had struck a chord, perhaps because of its simplicity, or perhaps because people desperately needed to believe in basic human goodness. Social media buzzed with reactions, ranging from cynicism to celebration. At Roth Tech Tower, Alexandra stood before her wall of screens, watching the story spread. Financial news channels were already speculating about the PR implications. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. "The board is pleased," Thomas reported, scrolling through messages. "They're calling it a humanizing moment. Your approval ratings are up 40%. Alexandra turned from the screens, an unfamiliar tension in her shoulders. Is that all they see? A PR opportunity? She thought of that morning's conversation, of Marcus breaking a scone in half with the dignity of a man sharing his last meal, of how he'd spoken about wealth and worth with more wisdom than any board member she'd ever met. In the cafe's kitchen, Marcus helped Sarah with the dishes, finding comfort in the familiar routine. But even here, change rippled through the air. Customers lingered longer, hoping to talk to him. Some offered money, which he politely declined. Others simply wanted to shake his hand, as if honesty were a rare commodity they needed to touch. "Do believe Channel 7 is offering an exclusive," Sarah mentioned, passing him a plate to dry. $5,000 for your story." Marcus's hands stilled on the dish towel. "Stories not for sale. Could help you get back on your feet," she suggested gently. He reached into his pocket, touching the bronze star. "Some things matter, more than getting back on your feet." The afternoon brought more reporters, more cameras. They captured the cafe's logo, made note of its quaint charm, turned Sarah's simple establishment into a symbol of something larger than itself. She watched her regular customers navigate the sudden attention, saw how they now looked at Marcus differently, not as the homeless man who helped around the cafe, but as some kind of urban saint. "It'll blow over," she assured him, but they both knew something had shifted irrevocably. In her office, Alexandra found herself returning to the cafe's website, studying the photos of its interior. The corner table where they'd sat was visible, unremarkable, except for how it had briefly brought two worlds together. Her sister had texted, "Saw the news. Maybe there's hope for you yet. Dinner Sunday?" The cursor blinked on her reply screen. For the first time in months, she hesitated before typing her usual excuse. The newspaper continued its journey through the city. A copy made its way to the park where Marcus usually slept, prompting well-meaning locals to leave blankets and food. Another reached the Veterans Center where he sometimes sought shelter, leading to quiet conversations about dignity and choice. By evening, when the cameras had finally tired of filming an empty cafe, Marcus helped Sarah close up. The newspaper lay forgotten on a table, its headline now wrinkled from countless readings. "You could have asked for a reward," Sarah said, picking up the paper. "No one would have blamed you." Marcus smiled, remembering Alexandra's similar observation. "Would have changed the story," he replied. "Made it about money instead of what it really was." And what was it really? He looked at the headline, at the photo of two people sharing coffee, separated by circumstance, but connected by something simpler and more profound. "A reminder," he said finally, "that we're all just people trying to do right by each other." As night fell, Alexandra stood at her office window, looking down at the city lights. The newspaper on her desk cast long shadows in the dimness. For the first time in years, her reflection in the glass showed something besides the carefully constructed image of success. It showed someone beginning to question what success really meant. 3 days after the wallet incident, Alexandra returned to Sarah's cafe, this time without an entourage, without cameras, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual corporate armor. She carried a single business card in her pocket. Not the standard Rothschild version, but one with her personal cell number handwritten on the back. Marcus was at his usual table, the morning crowds having finally returned to normal. He looked up as she approached, unsurprised, as though he'd been expecting her. "Thought you might come back," he said, pulling out a chair for her. Sarah appeared with 2 cups of coffee, then tactfully retreated. The cafe logo on the cups felt like an old friend now, a familiar bridge between their worlds. "I've been thinking," Alexandra began, turning the business card over in her hands beneath the table, "about what you said about walls." Marcus waited, patient as the sunrise. He'd learned long ago that some conversations needed space to breathe. "The board wants me to start a charitable foundation," she continued. "PR says it would help with our image, but—" She paused, finding the right words. "But I keep thinking about how you looked at that crystal award on my desk, like you saw right through it." "Saw what it really was," Marcus corrected gently. "A wall. Pretty one, but still a wall." Alexandra placed the business card on the table between them, her personal number facing up. "I want to do something real, not for PR, not for the board, something that actually matters. And you need my help?" There was no judgment in his voice, only careful consideration. "I need your perspective, your understanding of what people really need, not what corporations think they need." She tapped the card. "I want to offer you a job." The word hung between them, heavy with implications. Marcus's hand moved instinctively to his pocket, to the bronze star that anchored him to his past. "Not charity," Alexandra added quickly, reading his expression. "And not for show. I need someone who sees through walls, someone who understands both sides of the street." Sarah, pretending to wipe down nearby tables, couldn't help but overhear. She'd never heard Alexandra Rothschild speak this way, without corporate jargon, without the practiced polish of press conferences. "What kind of job?" Marcus asked finally. "Consultant, advisor, whatever title makes sense. The point is the work itself, helping me understand how to make real change, not just write checks." She leaned forward, animation replacing her usual reserve. "You know what people here need. You know their stories, their struggles. You see what I can't from my office." Marcus picked up the business card, studying the handwritten numbers. "People won't understand. They'll say you hired me for publicity." "Let them." Something fierce flashed in Alexandra's eyes. "I stopped caring what people say the moment you handed back my wallet without expecting anything in return." The morning light played across the cafe table, catching the edges of the business card. Marcus thought about the medal in his pocket, about choices and consequences, about walls and bridges. "There would be conditions," he said slowly. Alexandra nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I stay who I am, No suits, no offices. I work from here, from the streets. That's where the truth is. Agreed. And Sarah's cafe stays part of it. Not just as a meeting place, as a model. She's been helping people here for years, quiet-like. No press releases, no tax write-offs, just coffee and kindness. Sarah, still pretending not to listen, felt her eyes grow damp. Alexandra considered the cafe, seeing it with new eyes, not as a quaint backdrop to their story, but as a template for genuine community impact. One more thing, Marcus added, his voice softening. That dinner with your sister? The one you... Oh, keep putting off. Go to it. Alexandra blinked, caught off guard. That's not really part of the job description. No, Marcus smiled. That's part of breaking down walls. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had nothing and everything, who could see through corporate facades and armored hearts with equal clarity. Deal? She said finally, extending her hand. As they shook on it, Sarah appeared with fresh coffee, the cafe logo on the cups witnessing another moment of transformation. Outside, the city rushed past, unaware that in this small corner cafe, something revolutionary was taking root, not in boardrooms or charity galas, but in the simple space between two coffee cups and a business card with handwritten numbers. So, Alexandra said, pulling out her tablet, where do we start? Marcus's answer was interrupted by the cafe door opening. In walked Alexandra's sister, holding a familiar newspaper clipping and wearing an expression of determined hope. Sometimes, it seemed, walls came down faster than anyone expected. Sarah unlocked the cafe's staff room early the next morning, pressing a spare key into Marcus's hand. For when you need quiet, she said, or when the reporters come back. The key was brass, unremarkable, except for what it represented. Trust, belonging, a foundation for what was to come. Marcus ran his thumb over its ridges, remembering another key from long ago, to a home he'd lost. Ready? Alexandra stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, dressed more casually than her usual corporate attire. She'd listened when Marcus had talked about breaking down walls. The staff room became their war room, its walls soon covered with maps of the city, statistics on homelessness, and photographs of communities in need. Alexandra's corporate efficiency merged with Marcus's street-level wisdom, creating something entirely new. Tell me about this area, she said, pointing to a section of the map where Marcus had placed a red pin. Veterans' shelter there is overcrowded, he explained. Good people running it, but they're overwhelmed. And here, he moved his finger slightly east, 3 families living in cars. Parents still working, but can't make rent. Alexandra made notes, her fingers flying across the tablet. And why aren't they at the shelters? Shelters split up families. Parents won't do that to their kids. Marcus touched the bronze star in his pocket. Sometimes pride is all you've got left. Can't ask people to trade it for help. Thomas arrived, with reports and corporate proposals, looking uncomfortable in the modest surroundings. But he watched with growing interest as Marcus took a marker to the expensive presentation boards, marking them with real stories, real needs. Your 10 a.m. board meeting? Thomas reminded Alexandra gently. She looked up from where she and Marcus were deep in discussion. Reschedule it. This is more important. The board won't like that. The board, she said with new conviction, needs to understand what we're really doing here. Throughout the morning, cafe regulars stopped by their table, sharing stories and suggestions. Marcus knew them all, their struggles, their dreams, their daily battles. Alexandra listened, really listened, her corporate metrics giving way to human measures. See that woman? Marcus nodded toward an elderly customer. Works 2 jobs, raises her grandkids, needs someone to watch the little ones while she works, but can't afford daycare. Multiply that story by thousands. Alexandra's fingers paused over her tablet. We have an empty floor in the tower, supposed to be executive dining space. Could be something better, Marcus finished, understanding her thought. The key in his pocket pressed against his leg as he moved, a constant reminder of change. Not just his, he saw it in Alexandra too. The way she leaned forward when people spoke, the notes she took not about numbers but about names, stories, lives. Sarah brought lunch, simple sandwiches served on the cafe's plates. Alexandra ate with them, ignoring calls from her corporate dining service. "Your sister called the cafe," Sarah mentioned casually. "Asked about Sunday dinner." Alexandra met Marcus's steady gaze. "I'll be there." By afternoon, word had spread. A small crowd gathered outside. Not reporters this time, but people from the neighborhood, people with stories to tell, ideas to share. Marcus knew most of them from his years on the streets. "Should I call security?" Thomas asked, watching the crowd grow. "No," Alexandra said firmly. "This is exactly what we need." Marcus used his new key to open the staff room door wider, making space. The small room filled with voices, dreams, possibilities. Alexandra moved among them, no longer the ice queen of Silicon Alley, but something new, someone new. A young woman spoke about needing interview clothes for jobs. An elderly man mentioned medical bills. A teenager talked about wanting to learn coding but having no computer. Alexandra took notes, but differently now. Not as a CEO calculating returns, but as someone learning to see wealth in all its forms. "This," she said quietly to Marcus, "is what breaking down walls looks like." He touched the key in his pocket, feeling its weight. "No," he corrected gently. "This is what building bridges looks like." Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythms. But inside Sarah's cafe, in a small staff room opened by a simple brass key, something extraordinary was taking shape, a meeting of two worlds, each teaching the other how to see more clearly. The photograph fell from Marcus's worn wallet while he was reviewing community proposals with Alexandra. Faded and creased, it showed a younger Marcus in military dress uniform, standing beside a woman and two children. They were smiling, frozen. In a moment of perfect happiness, Alexandra caught it before it hit the floor. She started to hand it back, then paused, recognition flickering across her face. "This was in the papers," she said softly. 10 years ago. The Oakland Bridge collapse." Marcus's hands were steady as he took the photo, but his voice carried the weight of memory. "Laura always liked this picture, said it captured who we really were before." He didn't need to finish. Alexandra remembered the headlines. Bridge structural failure, 7 cars lost, 18 lives changed forever. She'd been so focused on Marcus's military background, she'd missed this other crucial piece of his story. "Your family," she said, not as a question, "was coming to surprise me at base." Bridge couldn't handle the winter storm. His fingers traced the edges of the photograph. Engineers knew it needed repair. Budget cuts kept pushing it back. Sometimes the most expensive decisions are the ones we think save money. Alexandra thought about her own company's cost-cutting measures, the time she'd chosen efficiency over humanity. "I'm so sorry, Marcus." "Been a long time," he said, but his hand moved to the bronze star in his pocket, as if one memory triggered another. Started wondering after that. Kept thinking, if I walked far enough, I'd find something that made sense again. Did you? Found something different, found out how many others are walking their own bridges, trying to make sense of their own storms. He carefully returned the photo to his wallet. Found out maybe that's why I'm still here, to help them. A cross. Sarah appeared with fresh coffee, having heard enough to know it was needed. The cafe logo on the cups seemed especially poignant now. Intertwined leaves, lives connected through loss and hope. That's why you wouldn't take a reward for the wallet, Alexandra realized. Why you won't take payment for helping people. Some things aren't about money. Laura taught me that. A small smile touched his lips. She'd have liked you, you know. Saw through walls, too. Alexandra thought about her own walls, built so carefully over years of corporate climbing, about her sister's persistent calls, the niece's artwork she kept meaning to hang. "Tell me about them," she said quietly, "if you want to." And for the first time in years, Marcus did. told her about Laura's laugh, about his daughter's dream of becoming an engineer, wanted to build bridges better, if you can believe it, about his son's paper route savings for college, about a life that had made perfect sense until it didn't. As he spoke, Alexandra saw her own mission shifting, deepening. This wasn't just about charitable foundations or corporate responsibility. It was about understanding the real cost of every decision, the human stories behind every statistic. "The community center we're planning," she said suddenly. "We should name it after them." Marcus shook his head. "No, names don't matter. Actions do." Laura would say the same. The afternoon light filtered through the cafe windows, casting soft shadows over the photograph that had changed their understanding of each other. Outside, the city moved in its endless rhythm, countless stories passing by untold. "You know," Marcus said, watching a family pass the window, "Laura used to say, 'Wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give away.'" He smiled at a memory. "Never knew how right she was, until I had nothing left to give but myself." Alexandra looked at her tablet, at the ambitious plans they'd been making. Maybe that's what all these programs need. Not just money and metrics, but heart, Sarah finished, setting down more coffee, like what Marcus has been giving this cafe for years. The photograph lay between them on the table, a bridge between past and present, loss and purpose. Alexandra saw in it not just the tragedy that had shaped Marcus, but the wisdom that tragedy had forged. Wisdom her corporate success had never taught her. "Let's do something else today," she decided, closing her tablet. "Tell me more about Laura's laugh." The letter arrived at Rothtech Tower on expensive paper, delivered by courier among the morning mail. No return address, just Alexandra's name in precise typescript. Thomas nearly missed it in the daily stack of corporate correspondence. "You need to see this," he said, placing it on Alexandra's desk. The contents were brief but devastating. "Your homeless hero isn't who he claims to be. Before you turn your company into a charity case, you might want to ask him about Afghanistan, about what really happened to his unit, about why a decorated veteran really chooses to live on the streets. The board deserves to know the truth, and so do your shareholders." Alexandra read it twice, her expression hardening. "Find out who sent this." "Already working on it." Thomas hesitated. "But Alexandra, what if there is something to it?" She thought about the family photograph, about Marcus's quiet dignity, about the bronze star he carried like a touchstone. "There's always something, Thomas. The question is why someone wants us to find it now." At Sarah's cafe, Marcus was meeting with a group of veterans, discussing how to improve the local shelter system. He didn't notice the man in the expensive suit watching from across the street, taking photos with a professional camera. "Got a situation," Sarah murmured, bringing him a fresh coffee. "Reporter types asking questions, not the usual feel-good story kinds." Marcus's hand moved to his pocket, to the familiar weight of his medal. Had to happen sometime. "They're asking about the war." Sarah's voice was gentle but worried. "About things you don't talk about." Before he could respond, Alexandra arrived, the letter crushed in her hand. The veterans respectfully gave them space, recognizing the look of someone carrying bad news. "You've seen them too?" Marcus asked, nodding toward the photographer who was trying to appear inconspicuous. "Got this morning." She smoothed the letter on the table between them. "Want to tell me about it?" Marcus read it slowly, his weathered face giving nothing away. Outside, more photographers had gathered, sensing a story breaking. "Afghanistan," he said finally, "was a long time ago." "Marcus." Alexandra leaned forward. "I've staked my reputation, my company's future on this partnership. If there's something I need to know." "There's plenty you need to know," he agreed. "Question is, who needs you to know it, and why now? Why?" Sarah brought fresh coffee, the cafe logo a reminder of simpler days. Through the windows, they could see news vans arriving. "My unit," Marcus began, his voice low, "was special operations, classified missions, the kind that don't make headlines. Until one did." He touched the bronze star through his jacket. Lost good men. The kind of loss that follows you home, makes you question everything. The medal? For what they could tell the public. The real story, he shook his head. Some stories belong to the dead. Alexandra's tablet buzzed with urgent messages. The board was calling an emergency meeting. Social media was already spinning theories. They'll dig, she warned. Whatever it is, they'll find it. Let them. Marcus's calm was absolute. Truth's like wealth, depends on how you measure it. Sarah approached their table again, concern etched on her face. Channel 4's asking for property records. About the cafe. Alexandra's head snapped up. Why the cafe? Because, Marcus said quietly, Sarah's been helping veterans off the books for years, giving jobs, safe space, second chances, the kind of help that doesn't look good on tax forms. Understanding dawned in Alexandra's eyes. They're not just coming after you. They're trying to destroy everything we're building. Question is, Marcus met her gaze steadily, what are you going to do about it? Outside, the media circus grew. Alexandra's phone rang continuously. Board members, shareholders, PR teams all demanding answers. The carefully constructed bridge between their worlds was being tested. She looked at the letter again, then at Marcus. In his eyes, she saw not guilt, but a deeper truth waiting to be understood. The same truth she'd seen when he'd returned her. Wallet without hesitation. Tell me everything, she decided. Not for them, for me, so I can fight whatever's coming. Marcus nodded slowly, the weight of unspoken stories settling between them. Might change how you see things. That, Alexandra said, thinking of walls and bridges, of wealth and worth, might be exactly what we both need. Sarah locked the cafe door against the growing media presence, turning the sign to closed. In the sudden quiet, Marcus began to speak, his words building a different kind of bridge, one made of trust, truth, and the kind of courage that comes from having nothing left to lose except what matters most. From a hidden compartment in his backpack, Marcus withdrew a weathered leather journal. Its pages were thick with years of writing, photographs and newspaper clippings carefully preserved between the sheets. He placed it on the cafe table between them, next to the anonymous threat letter. Started keeping this in Afghanistan, he said quietly. Helped make sense of things that didn't want to make sense. Alexandra watched as he opened it, revealing precise handwriting filled with dates, locations, and names. Some pages were stained with what might have been rain, or tears, or worse. Our unit was tasked with protecting local villages, building relationships, gathering intelligence. His fingers traced a list of names. These were my men, good soldiers, better humans. The journal told a story of trust built and betrayed, of intelligence that proved false, of a mission that went catastrophically wrong. Marcus's writing grew, more urgent on these pages, the neat script giving way to hurried notes. Someone sold us out, fed us information that led us into a trap. He turned to a page with a carefully preserved photograph of his unit. Lost 4 men that day. Could have lost everyone. Sarah quietly brought fresh coffee, then stationed herself at the door, turning away the persistent reporters still gathering. Outside. The official report called it a successful mission, Marcus continued. Said we'd neutralized a threat. Gave us medals. Called us heroes. His hand moved to the bronze star in his pocket. But the real story, he turned to the final. Pages about Afghanistan. The intel came from someone high up, someone who needed a victory for the reports, didn't care about the cost. I filed protests, demanded investigations. But you don't question certain decisions, not if you want to keep your career. Alexandra studied a newspaper clipping tucked into the journal, a small article about a decorated officer's unexpected retirement. So you left, thought I could leave it behind. Then the bridge collapsed. His voice caught slightly. Lost my family because someone decided maintenance costs were too high. Same story, different uniform. Understanding dawned in Alexandra's eyes. That's why you live like this, why you help people without taking payment. Marcus nodded, started seeing the pattern everywhere. People in power making decisions that look good on paper, while others pay the price. He gestured to the journal, started writing it all down. The stories of people I met on the streets, veterans failed by the system, families, one paycheck. From disaster. Through the cafe windows, they could see more media vans arriving. Thomas texted updates about the board's growing concerns. The person who sent that letter, Alexandra said slowly, they don't want to expose your past. They want to stop what we're doing here. Because it's working, Marcus agreed. Real change threatens people who profit from the way things are. He turned to the journal's latest entries. Plans for the community center, notes about families helped, ideas for systemic changes. This partnership, what we're building, it's not just about charity, it's about changing how decisions get made. Alexandra picked up the threat letter, then deliberately tore it in half. So we show them a different way. She pulled out her tablet, opened her email. Starting with the board meeting tomorrow. They'll fight back, Marcus warned. Might cost you everything you've built. She looked around the cafe, at the morning light streaming through windows, at Sarah steadfastly guarding their privacy, at the journal that held both tragedy and hope. No, she said firmly. It might cost me what I thought I'd built. But this, she gestured to their work, to the cafe, to the community they were creating. This is what real building looks like. Marcus studied her face, seeing not the corporate CEO, but the woman who'd sat down for coffee with a homeless man and really listened. Your sister's dinner, he reminded her gently. Still on for Sunday? Alexandra smiled, understanding the real question. Some bridges, once built, needed constant maintenance. Wouldn't miss it. He closed the journal but left it on the table between them. In its pages lay not just his story, but a blueprint for the change they were trying to create. One built on truth, no matter the cost. Outside, the media waited for scandal. Inside, surrounded by the warmth of Sarah's cafe, two people from different worlds deepened their alliance, strengthened by the very truths their enemies had hoped would destroy them. The business plan took shape in the pre-dawn hours at Sarah's cafe. Written not on corporate letterhead, but on the backs of order tickets and coffee-stained napkins. Alexandra had abandoned her tablet, choosing instead to write by hand as Marcus spoke, his experience flowing into a vision larger than either of them had initially imagined. Not just a foundation, he explained, sketching a rough diagram. A complete rethinking of corporate responsibility. Start with what we know works. Sarah's model. Sarah, who'd opened early to give them privacy, paused in her morning prep. My model? Small-scale personal impact, Marcus elaborated. You know every veteran who comes through that door. Their stories, their needs. You don't just serve coffee, you serve hope. Alexandra's pen moved rapidly, translating concept into structure. We scale that up, not by making it bigger, but by making it multiply. A network of small, community-owned businesses, each supported by Roth Tech resources. The plan grew beyond traditional corporate charity. Every page addressed both immediate needs and systemic changes. Job training programs run by people who'd lived the experience, housing initiatives that preserved dignity, medical care that acknowledged the complex reality of street life. Here's where it gets interesting, Alexandra said, drawing a flowchart. We're not just giving money, we're changing how Rothtech does business. Every corporate decision gets reviewed through a human impact lens. Marcus touched his journal, which still lay on the table. Like the bridge collapse, like Afghanistan, someone needs to ask the real questions before decisions get made. And that someone, Alexandra continued, will be a new board position, filled by people who've lived these experiences. She looked up at Marcus. Starting with you, the proposal was radical. It went beyond philanthropy into fundamental corporate reform. Every department would have advisors from the community. Every project would require impact assessment, not just for profits, but for people. The board will fight this, Thomas warned, arriving with fresh market projections. Shareholders will panic. Let them, Alexandra replied, adding another page. to their growing plan, because we're going to show them something they've never seen before, a company that makes more money by putting humanity first. She outlined the marketing potential, the brand loyalty, the innovation that came from diverse perspectives. But more than that, she showed how their approach could prevent costly mistakes, the kind that came from ignoring human factors in corporate equations. Think about it, Marcus said, pointing to his journal. Every story in here represents a decision someone made without understanding the real consequences. How much does that cost in the end? Sarah brought fresh coffee, then contributed her own insights. Years of watching her small kindnesses create rippling changes in the community. It's like dropping a stone in water, she said. You never know how far the circles will spread. The morning light strengthened as they worked, casting long shadows across their impromptu business plan. Outside, early commuters passed by, unknowingly witnessing the birth of something revolutionary in a simple corner cafe. We'll need proof of concept, Alexandra mused, reviewing their notes. Something immediate and visible. Start here, Marcus suggested, gesturing around them. Sarah's cafe becomes the prototype. Show them what happens when business and community truly merge. The plan's final pages focused on implementation. Phase 1 centered on the cafe and surrounding neighborhood, creating a model that could be studied, refined, and replicated. Every step was grounded in real experiences, real needs, real possibilities. It's not just about helping people, Marcus explained, his voice quiet but intense. It's about changing how we define success. Alexandra looked at their work. Pages of orders and napkins covered with a vision that could transform not just her company, but the very nature of corporate responsibility. It was messy, unconventional, and absolutely right. The board meets in 3 hours, Thomas reminded them. Good. Alexandra gathered the papers carefully, treating coffee stains and napkin edges with the same respect she'd once reserved for premium stationery. Because this isn't a defense against their accusations. This is a revolution. Marcus watched her collect their impromptu business plan, seeing not the ice queen of Silicon Alley, but a true partner in change, ready to break down some walls. She smiled, thinking of bridges instead of walls, of connections instead of barriers. No, she replied, ready to build something better. Sarah began opening the cafe for regular business, the morning sun, now fully illuminating their night's work. The business plan, this blueprint for transformation, sat ready for its moment before the board, its coffee stains and napkin edges testifying to its authenticity. The architectural plans spread across 3 tables in Sarah's cafe, blue lines and careful measurements, mapping out a future that just weeks ago would have seemed impossible. The former Rothtech executive dining floor was transforming on paper, its luxury giving way to purpose. See how the spaces flow. The architect, a former homeless veteran himself, traced the design with practiced fingers. No institutional feelings, no cold corridors. Everything connects, like a community should. Alexandra and Marcus studied the layout. Where corporate dining rooms once stood, classrooms and training spaces would emerge. The executive lounge would become a medical clinic. The premium kitchen would serve both job training and community meals. The walls, Marcus noted, pointing to a detail. They're all glass. Transparency, the architect confirmed. Both literal and symbolic. No more invisible people, no more hidden stories. The plans showed more than just rooms and facilities. They revealed a philosophy built into every detail. Dignity designed into the very structure. The entrance welcomed, rather than intimidated. The spaces encouraged connection, rather than isolation. Look at this, Alexandra said, indicating a series of small offices. These were my idea, micro-business incubators. People can start their own enterprises, like Sarah's cafe. Sarah, who'd been following the discussion while managing her morning rush, smiled at the mention. Her cafe had become more than a model. It was now a living blueprint for their vision. And here, Marcus added, pointing to an open area, community gathering space. For meetings, sure, but also for stories. People need to be heard before they can be helped. The architectural plans had gone through 12 revisions, each one incorporating feedback from the people they aimed to serve. Veterans suggested security features that wouldn't trigger PTSD. Single mothers recommended childcare spaces visible from training areas. Former addicts advised on medical clinic design. The board actually approved this? Thomas asked, arriving with the latest financial projections. They didn't just approve it, Alexandra replied, a hint of pride in her voice. They're expanding it. 3 more locations already in planning. The media storm had transformed into something unexpected. Instead of scandal, they'd found substance. Instead of controversy, they'd discovered conviction. The story had shifted from a simple wallet return to a fundamental reimagining of corporate purpose. Timeline looks good, the architect said, checking his notes. We can start demolition next week, full completion in 6 months. Marcus touched the plans gently, thinking of other blueprints, bridges that failed, missions that went wrong. This time we build it right, he murmured, from the foundation up. Community members drifted in and out of the cafe, each stopping to look at the plans, offering suggestions, seeing themselves in the future taking shape on paper. Alexandra watched their faces, remembering how she used to view success through spreadsheets and stock prices. It's more than a building, she realized aloud. It's a promise. Like returning a wallet, Marcus agreed. Simple act, bigger meaning. Sarah brought coffee to the planning table, the cafe's logo on the cups now carrying the weight of legacy. Other businesses in the neighborhood had begun adopting their model. The ripples were spreading. Got the first job training applications, Thomas reported, setting down a thick folder. Over 200 so far, words getting around. The architect made minor adjustments to the plans, incorporating the morning's suggestions. Each change represented a voice heard, a need recognized, a bridge built between intention and impact. Outside, construction equipment was already arriving. At the Rothschild Tower, preparing for transformation. Inside Sarah's cafe, the architectural plans showed not just rooms and walls, but a new way of thinking about business, community, and the spaces where they meet. You know what Laura would say about this? Marcus said quietly to Alexandra, remembering his wife's wisdom about wealth and giving. Alexandra nodded, understanding now in a way she hadn't before. The true measure of success wasn't in what you built for yourself, but in what you built for others. The morning light shifted across the blueprints, highlighting different aspects of their shared vision. In the margins, small notes captured human details. Make sure windows open. Natural. Light in all spaces. Remember to add plants. Simple things that marked the difference between a facility and a home. The board meeting minutes lay on Alexandra's desk like a declaration of war. Phrases jumped out in stark corporate language: fiscal responsibility concerns, shareholder value protection, reputational risk assessment. But it was the final motion that cut deepest. Immediate suspension of all community initiative programs, pending full audit and review. Thomas delivered the document personally to Sarah's cafe, where Alexandra and Marcus were reviewing applications for the training programs. They called an emergency session, he explained. Didn't even notify you. Alexandra scanned the minutes, her expression hardening. 7 votes to 2. They've been planning this. Harrison Investment Group, Marcus noted, reading over her shoulder. They've been buying up shares. Hostile takeover? Sarah asked, bringing fresh coffee to the suddenly tense table. Worse, Alexandra replied. They want to restore shareholder confidence by returning to core business principles. They're trying to erase everything we've built. The minutes detailed the arguments against their initiative. Cost overruns in the renovation, delayed product launches, excessive community involvement in corporate decisions. Every criticism wrapped in careful corporate language, every attack disguised as concern. They're using my background, Marcus said quietly, finding his name in the document, questioning the wisdom of having a person of uncertain history in a position of corporate influence. Alexandra's hand clenched around her coffee cup. After everything we've accomplished, the positive press, the community support, the brand loyalty metrics, it's not about metrics, Thomas said gently. It's about control. You're changing too much, too fast, making too many powerful people uncomfortable. Outside the cafe, construction at Rothtech Tower had halted. Workers stood in confused groups, reading stop-work orders. The architectural plans they'd celebrated just days ago were now officially under review. They can't just stop everything, Sarah protested. People are counting on these programs. We have families waiting for help, veterans expecting training spots. Marcus touched his journal, thinking of other battles, other ways of fighting. What they don't understand, he said slowly, is that some things, once started, can't be stopped. They're trying to build walls, but we've already built bridges. Alexandra's phone buzzed continuously, reporters seeking comment, board members demanding compliance, shareholders expressing concern. But beneath the corporate chaos, she saw something else in the meeting minutes: fear. Look at this language, she pointed out. Unprecedented community engagement, radical transparency requirements, systematic restructuring of corporate priorities. They're not afraid we'll fail. They're afraid we'll succeed. Because if we do, Marcus finished, other companies might follow. Other boards might have to answer harder questions. Sarah turned the cafe's open sign to closed, creating a quiet space for strategy. The morning regulars, many of them now involved in the initiative, gathered outside in silent support. They've called for a full shareholder meeting, Thomas reported, checking his tablet. 3 days from now, they'll try to remove you from the board. Alexandra studied the meeting minutes again, seeing beyond the corporate jargon to the real story. This wasn't just about one company's direction. It was about challenging a system that profited from maintaining walls between worlds. Remember what you told me about Afghanistan? She asked Marcus. About decisions made by people who never saw the consequences? He nodded, understanding where she was going. That's what this is. They want to make decisions without seeing faces, without hearing stories. She stood, decision crystallizing. So we make them see. She turned to Thomas. How many people have we helped so far? Real numbers. 412 direct beneficiaries. Job training, housing assistance, medical. Carry? Another 1,000 indirectly through community programs. Get them all, she said. Every single one. I want them at that shareholder meeting. Alexandra, Thomas cautioned, corporate protocol doesn't allow. Protocol is what they're hiding. Behind. Humanity is what we're fighting for. Marcus watched her transformation, not from corporate leader to humanitarian, but to something new. A bridge builder who understood both worlds and refused to choose between them. They'll fight. Dirty, he warned. Good. Alexandra gathered the meeting minutes, her own battle plans forming. Because we'll fight true. Every story, every face, every life changed. That's our weapon. Let them try to explain to their shareholders why helping people is bad for business. Sarah began calling community leaders. Marcus opened his journal, ready to share more hard truths. Thomas, after a moment's hesitation, started making lists of media contacts. The storm was coming. But this time, they weren't just building bridges, they were building an army of hope. The petition started as a single sheet of paper on Sarah's counter. By morning, it had grown into a book of stories, each signature accompanied by a personal testament of how the initiative had changed lives. Veterans wrote about finding purpose. Mothers described children now in safe homes. Former executives shared epiphanies about true wealth. 2,000 signatures, Sarah announced, adding another completed page to the growing stack. And these aren't just names. These are witnesses. The cafe had become petition central, with people lining up outside to sign. Each entry was a bullet point in their arsenal against corporate indifference. Thanks to the training program, I now own my own repair shop. The medical clinic caught my daughter's illness early. For the first time in years, I feel like a person, not a problem. Alexandra and Marcus sat at their usual table, reviewing the testimonials. The corporate world's weapons were spreadsheets and protocols. Their weapons were stories and truths. Harrison Investment Group just released another statement, Thomas reported, tablet in hand. Concerns about fiscal responsibility and corporate focus. Show them this, Marcus replied, holding up a letter from a veteran who'd gone from sleeping rough to managing the new community kitchen. Ask them to put a price tag on a saved life. The petition had taken on a life of its own. Local businesses added their support, documenting increased foot traffic and safer streets. Police reports showed declining crime rates in areas where the initiative operated. Even some shareholders began signing, recognizing that social impact and profit weren't enemies. They're trying to paint us as naive idealists, Alexandra said, reading the latest board communication. Bleeding hearts bad for business. So we show them the numbers, Sarah suggested, bringing fresh coffee. How many of our training program graduates now own businesses, pay taxes, employ others? The cafe's walls were papered with success. Stories, photographs, thank you letters, news clippings, each one a testament to what happened when walls became bridges. Got something else, Thomas said, looking up from his tablet. Remember that bridge collapse that took Marcus's family? Guess who was on the committee that delayed maintenance? Harrison's CEO. Marcus went still, his hand moving to the bronze star in his pocket. Alexandra watched him, seeing not defeat but determination sharpen his features. It's always the same story, he said quietly. Different uniforms, different titles. Same pattern. People in power making decisions without seeing the human cost. Then we make them see. Alexandra stood, decision crystallizing. The shareholder meeting tomorrow? We're not just bringing the petition, we're bringing everyone who signed it. Sarah's eyes widened. You want to fill the corporate headquarters with the people whose lives were changed, the real stakeholders. Alexandra's voice carried the strength of certainty. Let Harrison try to explain his cost-cutting to a room full of faces he can't ignore. The cafe door opened, bringing another wave of petition signers. Among them, Alexandra recognized her sister, pushing through the crowd with determination. Got your message, her sister said, reaching for the petition. About damn time, sis. Where do I sign? As the day progressed, more unexpected allies emerged. Junior executives from Rothschild, inspired by the changes they'd witnessed. Business school professors documenting the initiative as a new model of corporate responsibility. Even a few board members privately expressing support. The petition grew, not just in signatures, but in power. Each name represented a story that couldn't be dismissed with corporate jargon. Each testimony proved that profit and purpose could coexist. You know they'll try to stop us, Thomas warned. Security, protocols, shareholders only. Let them try, Alexandra replied, watching another group of petition signers share coffee and stories. Some protocols need to be broken for better ones to be built. Marcus touched the petition's pages gently, remembering his own journey from returning a wallet to helping reshape a corporation. Not about breaking, he corrected, about rebuilding, better this time, stronger. Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows through the cafe windows. Tomorrow would bring their biggest challenge. But tonight, in this simple cafe where it all began, hope felt as tangible as the pages of signatures mounting on Sarah's counter. Ready? Alexandra asked Marcus, gathering the petition for tomorrow's battle. He smiled, thinking of bridges and walls, of losses and gains, of all the ways wealth could be measured. Truth always is. The Rothschild employee badge felt strange in Marcus's hands, not because of its sleek corporate design or the high-tech security features, but because of the title beneath his name, Director of Community Impact Assessment. His photo showed him As he was, no suit, no corporate polish, just the honest face of a man who'd walked both sides of the street. The shareholder meeting had ended hours ago, but its echoes still resonated through the building. The massive auditorium had been packed not just with investors and board members, but with hundreds of petition signers. Every corporate argument had been met with a human story, every financial concern answered with proof of impact. "Still can't believe Harrison's face," Thomas said, adjusting his own badge as they walked through the transformed executive floor. "When that veteran he'd trained started talking about rebuilding lives instead of just bridges." Alexandra smiled, remembering the moment the tide had turned. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is simple truth. The former executive dining room was now a community center hub, its marble floors covered with practical carpeting, its crystal chandeliers replaced with warm lighting. People moved purposefully through the space. Program coordinators, training, instructors, community members. Each wore a badge similar to Marcus's, their titles reflecting a new corporate vocabulary: peer support specialist, community learning facilitator, impact assessment coordinator. Latest numbers came in. Thomas reported, checking his tablet. Employee satisfaction up 60%, brand loyalty metrics breaking records. 3 major corporations have requested our community impact framework. "And Harrison?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Resigned this morning." Board accepted unanimously. Alexandra led them to what had once been her private executive suite. It was now a collaborative workspace, its walls covered with community feedback boards and project timelines. Turns out shareholders appreciate knowing their investments help people while making profits. Marcus's badge caught the light as he pinned it to his jacket, the same worn jacket he'd been wearing when he found Alexandra's wallet. He'd refused to change his appearance for his new role, understanding that his authenticity was part of his value. "Got the first draft of the new corporate charter," Thomas said, bringing up a document on the main screen. "Revolutionary stuff. Every major decision requires community impact assessment. Profit metrics include social benefit calculations. Board seats reserved for community representatives." Sarah had set up a satellite cafe in the building's lobby, its familiar logo now alongside Rothschild's corporate branding. The smell of coffee drifted up to the executive floor, bringing with it memories of where their journey had begun. "Training programs full," Marcus reported, checking his own notes. "Had to start a waiting list. But here's the real victory. Half our new instructors came through the program themselves. They're not just learning, they're leading." Alexandra watched the transformation unfolding around them. Security guards who once would have escorted Marcus out now greeted him with respect. Executives who'd opposed the initiative were now proposing expansions. Even the physical space felt different, more alive, more human. "Your sister called," Thomas mentioned to Alexandra. "The foundation board meeting is set for Sunday. After family dinner," she said. Alexandra's smile widened. Weekly family dinners had become non-negotiable, a personal transformation as significant as the corporate one. "Wouldn't miss it." Marcus touched the bronze star in his pocket, then his new badge. Different symbols of service, bridging different parts of his journey. "Laura would have loved this," he said quietly. Seeing walls become windows. Through those windows, they could see the city stretching out before them. Somewhere out there, another wallet might be lost, another choice would need to be made, another opportunity for humanity to triumph over habit would arise. "Got something to show you," Alexandra said, leading them to a new installation in the lobby. A simple plaque hung beside the community center entrance, its message clear and strong. "True wealth is measured not by what we keep, but by what we give, what we build, and who we lift." Below it, in smaller letters, "In memory of Laura Thompson, and all those who taught us to see with our hearts." Marcus stood silent, his new badge catching the light, his weathered hand touching the plaque's surface. Behind him, program participants and corporate executives mingled in the transformed space, their own badges marking them not by rank, but by purpose. "Think we got it right this time?" Alexandra asked softly. Marcus watched a young veteran welcome. New program participants saw the mixture of hope and determination in their eyes. "No," he replied. "Think we got it better, and we'll keep making it better." His badge, this symbol of institutional transformation, reflected both who he was and who the company was becoming: authentic, purposeful, unafraid of truth. 1 year to the day after Marcus had returned her wallet, Alexandra sat at their usual table in Sarah's cafe. 2 coffee cups sat before her, one from that first morning, preserved by Sarah as a piece of history, and one fresh steaming with today's brew. Both bore the cafe's intertwined leaves logo, now a symbol recognized across the city. "Feeling nostalgic?" Marcus asked, settling into his chair. He'd just finished leading a morning orientation for new program participants at Rothschild Tower. "Remembering," Alexandra corrected, touching the rim of the old cup. "How angry I was that morning when Thomas suggested I meet you myself. How sure I was that my time was too valuable for such things." Sarah brought Marcus his usual coffee, completing their daily ritual. The cafe had expanded, taking over the adjacent storefront, but this corner remained unchanged, their anchor in a sea of transformation. "Just got the annual report," Thomas announced, joining them with his tablet. "Want to hear the numbers?" Alexandra glanced at Marcus, sharing a smile. "Let's hear the stories first. Numbers are just shadows of what matters." Thomas had adapted to their way of thinking, learning to measure success in human terms. "Well, remember Maria, the single mum from the first training cohort? She's opening her second restaurant next month, employing 3 program graduates." More stories followed. Veterans leading peer support groups, families moving from shelters to homes, communities rebuilding from within. The ripples of their work had become waves of change. "And the corporate side?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. He'd been in the board meetings, his presence now as natural as his worn jacket among the suits. 5 major corporations have adopted our model," Thomas reported. "Harrison's replacement is speaking at next week's business conference about the revolution of responsibility. Stock price is at an all-time high, by the way." Alexandra lifted her current coffee cup, watching the morning light play through the steam. "Remember what you said about wealth that first morning, about how we measure it?" "Remember what you taught me about walls," Marcus countered, "about how they work both ways." Sarah joined them during her break, adding her own cup to their table. The cafe's success had allowed her to hire more staff, giving her time to be part of the larger mission she'd helped inspire. "Got 3 more cafes opening next month," she announced, "all run by program graduates, all using the same model: business in front, community center in back." The morning sun streamed through windows now decorated with community artwork. Regular customers mingled with business executives, program participants chatted with corporate trainers. The walls between worlds had become permeable, then transparent, then nearly invisible. "Your sister's foundation is expanding too," Thomas added. 4 new cities asking to replicate the program. Alexandra's relationship with her family had healed alongside her corporate transformation. Sunday dinners had become a sanctuary where business talk was banned, but humanity celebrated. Her niece's artwork now hung proudly in her office. Marcus touched his badge, then the bronze star in his pocket. "Laura used to say that every end is just a different kind of beginning." "Speaking of beginnings," Sarah interjected, "the veterans. Shelter director is here to see you both." The shelter director approached their table, carrying architectural plans for a new facility. More bridges to build, more walls to transform into windows. Alexandra looked at the 2 coffee cups before her. Past and present, corporate and community, separation and connection. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found my wallet that morning." "Someone else would have," Marcus said with quiet certainty. "Worlds full of people trying to do right, just needed someone to notice." Thomas's tablet chimed with new reports, more success stories, further evidence that their revolution was spreading. But here in the cafe, at this table with its 2 coffee cups, the metrics felt secondary to the moment. "Next quarter's initiatives?" Thomas prompted gently. Alexandra smiled, lifting her current cup in a subtle toast to its preserved predecessor. "Let's start with what matters. Marcus, tell me about the family you met yesterday." As Marcus began to speak, sharing another story of struggle and hope, the morning light caught both coffee cups, one old, one new, both marking points on a journey that had transformed not just a company or a community, but the very meaning of wealth and worth. The cornerstone was simple granite, unlike the glossy marble that adorned most corporate buildings. Its inscription read, "Rothschild Community Foundation, where true wealth builds real worth." Below, 2 names were carved with equal prominence: Alexandra Rothschild and Marcus Thompson. They stood before it on the morning of the new building's dedication, the rising sun casting long shadows across the plaza. What had begun in a small cafe was now a 15-story testament to transformation, its design a perfect blend of dignity and purpose. "Should have used your full title," Alexandra mused, touching the carved letters of Marcus's name. "Director of Community Impact sounds more impressive." Marcus smiled, his hand moving to the familiar weight of the bronze star in his pocket. "Some titles you earn with papers. Others you earn with life. Think I prefer the second kind." Sarah had set up a coffee station for the ceremony, the cafe's logo now as much a part of the foundation's identity as Rothschild's corporate brand. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the morning air, drawing early arrivals into comfortable conversation. "Final registration numbers," Thomas reported, approaching with his ever-present tablet. "Over 1,000 people coming to the dedication, press from 12 countries, and," he smiled, "Harrison's replacement is announcing similar initiatives at 6 other major corporations." Alexandra watched the growing crowd, seeing not statistics but stories. Former program participants now wore staff badges. Veterans who'd once slept rough now trained others in peer support. Single mothers who'd struggled now ran their own businesses. "Laura would have loved this," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of memory and meaning. "She always said wealth was just potential until you used it right." The cornerstone caught the strengthening sunlight, its simple inscription a reminder of how far they'd come. From a lost wallet to a found purpose, from corporate walls to community bridges. "You know," Alexandra said, "I never thanked you properly for returning my wallet that day. Never thanked you for seeing more than just a homeless man." Marcus countered. Sarah joined them, carrying 3 coffee cups bearing her cafe's logo. "Some thank yous don't need words," she observed, handing them their drinks. "They need actions." The plaza filled with people gathering for the dedication. Alexandra's sister herded her children through the crowd, their artwork already hanging in the building's community spaces. Board members mingled with program participants. Corporate executives chatted with community leaders. The walls between worlds had become so transparent they'd nearly vanished. "Next phase starts tomorrow," Thomas reminded them, checking his schedule. 5 more cities, 20 new partners. But for now, they stood in the morning light, coffee cups in hand, watching their shared vision rise in steel and stone before them. The cornerstone marked more than just a building's foundation. It marked a revolution in how business measured success, how community built strength, how humanity recognized wealth. Marcus touched the carved letters of his name, then the bronze star in his pocket. "Not about the names," he said softly, "about the story they tell." Alexandra nodded, understanding. The cornerstone would outlast them both, but its meaning would live in the lives they'd helped transform, in the bridges they'd built, in the definition of wealth they'd dared to change. "Time to begin," Thomas said gently, nodding toward the waiting crowd. They moved toward the podium together, leaving their coffee cups on the cornerstone. Behind them, the rising sun caught the granite surface, making the inscription glow with promise. Before them, 1,000 faces reflected the truth they'd discovered that morning, with a lost wallet and a simple choice. That some wealth can't be measured in dollars. That some returns on investment are counted in changed lives. That some foundations are built not of stone, but of stories. And that sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you build, but who you become while building it. The cornerstone would stand as testament to this truth, its simple presence reminding future generations that true transformation begins with a single choice: to see wealth differently, to break down walls, to build bridges instead. Just as the morning sun had risen on their first meeting in Sarah's cafe, it now rose on their legacy, warming the cornerstone that marked not an ending, but a continuation. For every story of change creates ripples, every bridge built inspires another, and every wall transformed into a window lets in light for others to follow. And somewhere in the city, perhaps another wallet waits to be found, another choice waits to be made, another story waits to begin.